And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause.
All right, that's enough. Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
I mean, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All righty, with SEC Media Days on the docket, where does Tennessee rank in terms of transfer portal maneuvering? You know about Nico, but there's more than just that. Other players left. Other players came to Tennessee. So where does Tennessee rank among the top teams in the SEC? We shall discuss in terms of players lost, players gained during both the spring transfer portal and as well the overall transfer portal. But that's not all. That'll be today's tough question, brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Did the Vols win the transfer portal? We'll ask that question. You know, Nico was so much news, Caleb, that I think sometimes the numbers get lost. But when we dive into those, Tennessee probably fared better than most of its own fans thought.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it kind of reminds me sometimes what stands out isn't always reflected in data. Like the big story doesn't reflect data. I mean, that's my problem in politics is people think there's a narrative out there because of one big story, but they don't study the data behind it. It's the same here. The best comparison I could think of, Dave, is Arian Foster. Like the big story is the couple of key fumbles he had, but the actual data showed that he didn't fumble that much and he was pretty good at taking care of the ball when he held on to it.
Yeah, and I still remember a News Sentinel headline that read "Fumbling Foster," even though that's not what my column was about. As a matter of fact, it was pointing out that he really didn't fumble that much. It was just in key areas. So I don't think Arian Foster was very happy with that. By the way, I saw a clip of him talking about Nico Iamaleava. And he was very much a proponent that Nico should have stayed. And he said something that made a lot of sense. Maybe we'll get to that later in the program. He's essentially going to pay about 18% more income tax, make $1.5 million as opposed to $2.5 million at UT. So what the heck went on there?
That is kind of odd. You're right.
He took a pay cut to play for what I would consider a lesser program.
Oh, yeah. I don't think he did it on purpose. I think he thought his family thought he could negotiate more money on the open market, and then they realized he couldn't. That wasn't like, they didn't willingly say, let me go take a pay cut. He thought by being a free agent, he was going to be able to command more money because my understanding is that Lenora Sellers was offered $4 million. And Jimmy Hyams always brought a great point up because the Nico team tried to be like, oh, we were looking for a pro-style offense. And Jimmy was like, do you really think that would have mattered to them if Tennessee offered him $4 million to stay?
Yeah. It's absolutely absurd. All right, so on the program today, also we will get to what else do we have coming up? As we mentioned, Tennessee lost 9 starters. Well, we haven't mentioned that. I'll mention it now. Tennessee's lost 9 starters on offense, and this kind of sunk in yesterday. I can't remember a more significant roster turnover. We'll have this day in Tennessee sports history, brought to you by Sports Treasures. And which of the 3 big games on Tennessee's schedule are they most likely to win? We'll break that down. Of course, we're talking about Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. There's no doubt there. Will the Vols actually be better on the edge this year without James Pierce? In retrospect, you could say so. Stat of the day brought to you by Newbert Collision. Also, hot seat coaches in the SEC. There are plenty. You could see a massive amount of turnover. And Caleb, I think you're going to see athletic directors get less and less patient because the money is getting bigger, much like the NFL and other professional leagues. It's just going to follow in that model. There was a time, I think, when I started covering football, you got 5 years. Let's say in the mid-'90s, you got 5 years. Somewhere along the line, quickly in my career, that slipped to 4. And then somewhere along the line, I think it may have slipped to 3. If you don't get something done within 3, that's pretty good, Caleb. I'm not sure that you're around much longer.
Well, yeah, wasn't it, if I can remember correctly, Ron Zook was the first one I remember that only got 3 years. And he got fired in the middle of the 3rd season after losing to Mississippi State when Mississippi State was really, 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 really bad.
All right, so here we go. let's get rolling right now as he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Please click that thumbs up button. We greatly appreciate that. Adam says, how many fumbles is a lot for a running back? I guess one, technically. That's the way coaches look at it. One is a lot, right?
Yeah, I agree. But like, if we're being honest, I don't know the exact number. Adam's turning into Denzel from Remember the Titans. If you drop a pass, you will run a mile. If you fumble the football, you will run a mile.
You know, I've never seen that movie.
It's a disgrace to the game of football.
Oh,
like if there are some football, they win on a 75-yard run with 3 seconds left. Nobody's going to run the ball with 3 seconds left, needing a touchdown to win on their own 25-yard line.
Here we go. Let's get rolling right now. And one question on the message board I do want to get to is David said there were only 7 transfers. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have that column up on offthehooksports.com. I think you're agreeing with me. I thought for a second I may have misspoke there. All right. So the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, as we're going to get to today's tough question. All right, Caleb, if I ask Joe Schmo, who lives in St. Louis, Washington, Miami, wherever, but is a college football fan and follows the sport, and I ask them, Tennessee, did they win the transfer portal? What do you think that person's going to immediately say? What immediately comes to their lips? What do they convey?
Obviously, it would be straight up Nico Iamaleava would be the first thing they said.
Okay. Is that fair?
I think it's fair to a certain degree because, I mean, it's not just starters you lose, but it's where you lose them. And Nico Iamaleava was an important starter, you would agree, as a quarterback.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and ask this question. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. And let's make it the poll question as well. And that is, I'm going to assert that Tennessee won the transfer portal, despite the Nico Iamaleava loss. And I'm going to provide you with some numbers. Okay. Tennessee, first of all, did lose Nico Iamaleava. Significant loss, did not help in terms of PR. But in terms of total players lost in the spring window, they were middle of the pack, tied with Auburn, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. Arkansas, Missouri lost more with 7. Kentucky, Mississippi State lost 8. Ole Miss lost 9. They want to turn that roster over pretty much every year. Tennessee lost 6. Oklahoma lost 5. Georgia and Texas lost 4. Florida and Texas A&M lost 2. LSU lost 1. Alabama did not lose 1 in the spring window. Now, as far as the overall entire offseason, both transfer portals, Tennessee only lost 22 players. For comparison's sake, the worst in terms of players lost was Arkansas with 38, Oklahoma with 37. What do those two schools have in common? They may have a coach on the hot seat. Texas, however, which I believe will be picked to win the SEC at SEC Media Days in Atlanta, lost just 16 players. Now, stick with me. In terms of players gained, Tennessee was actually last in the SEC. They picked up just 4 players in both windows combined. Mississippi State picked up 31 players as they try to flip that roster. Ole Miss, now most of these programs did not have success last year that really flipped their roster. Ole Miss, however, did flip their roster. That's their mantra. That's what they're going to do with 30 players gained in both transfer windows. Caleb, I don't know that that's the way to go long term. We'll see. But Lane Kiffin's obviously taking that entire experiment to the extreme. But what do you make of Tennessee when you look at the fact that they didn't have much turnover in their roster? Just innately, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
So by itself, I agree with you. It's a good thing. And I think we saw this with the 2022 Tennessee football team. And it's one that we have to bring up a good bit because the 2022 team, what we don't talk about enough with that team is that they were so successful, I think, because they returned so many players who were so familiar with the system. There was a level of chemistry there that actually outweighed Alabama when they played Alabama. Honestly, it's the biggest reason they beat Alabama. I mean, Bryce Young outplayed Hendon Hooker that day, but Tennessee and Alabama had more talent. You can look at the NFL; they had more talent, but Tennessee collectively played as a unit so well. I think that's why they manhandled Alabama on the line of scrimmage. That's why they won the skill position plays on the outside. I think that's why they won everywhere outside of quarterback. Honestly, so I'm very big in a vacuum on the positives of an advantage of team chemistry. That doesn't necessarily mean I agree with you about the fact that they won the transfer portal. And do you want me to go ahead and say why?
Well, let's ask today's tough question, brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Did Tennessee win the transfer portal? I'm going to go first because I think I know where you're going. Is that okay?
That's fair.
All right. I think Tennessee did win the transfer portal. I think that all things being equal, which they're not, but you would prefer, unless you're taking over a program, you're in year 1, year 2. Like, I understand Mississippi State flipping the roster. I don't think it's a great idea that Ole Miss is flipping rosters now that Lane Kiffin's been there, 4, 5 years? I think when you get to that point, you should have some stability. So the fact that Tennessee didn't have a tremendous amount of losses, they did have Nico, I understand that. But the fact that he was already becoming an off-the-field problem, I think they won it. I think that they won it in terms of Joey Aguilar. They pick him up. He's a competent quarterback. You know, I'm not one that's ready to say start hanging championship banners because Joey Aguilar's in town. But I will say this. I think he's a more than competent replacement, and I think Jake Merklinger is a more than competent replacement. So whereas Tennessee went with one bona fide starter, I think they have 2 guys that can get the job done. Again, I'm not getting in that preseason optimistic mode where I'm going to blow sunshine and all that stuff, okay? I'm not trying to do that. But given that Nico's family was a distraction off the field, and that's become readily apparent, and that Tennessee didn't have to flip a lot, was able to go out and get a quarterback, which showed they were tied into the system. Caleb, I think they won the transfer portal, but I have a feeling you're going to disagree. General Ursa says Aguilar doesn't have the talent. Nico has, but Heupel's ability to coach up his players will be the difference. We shall see. All right, what do you got?
All right, here is my big contention with this. Tennessee. It's not a win that they return who they return, even though Nico's such a significant loss, although that does matter. It's, Dave, the teams that are ahead of them that you were talking about. Let's just go ahead and go through that list. The teams that lost fewer players than Tennessee.
Okay.
Texas was number 1. Georgia was number 2. Florida and Vanderbilt were tied for number 3. Tennessee placed 3 of those 4 teams.
Okay.
So
I'm not sure where you're going with that, though.
The advantage that Tennessee would have, there are 3 circle games. We're going to talk about this later in the segment. That in the show, there's 3 circle games on Tennessee's schedule: Florida, Georgia, Alabama. Like, I think the season comes down to those 3 games. 2 of those 3 return more talent, lost fewer guys to the transfer portal than Tennessee. So the whole chemistry edge that you would want them to have, they're not going to have it against Georgia, and they're not going to have it against Florida. From the transfer portal success.
No, it's not cut and dry. You can't just say because there was less plus minus turnover that this team has better chemistry than another. I don't think it's that easy.
Yeah, but I think it's one. I mean, Georgia's got 2 national titles. I don't think you would, or I would question Kirby Smart's ability to develop chemistry in that program. So losing fewer players. I mean, can we honestly say that it's? I guess the point I'm at is you can't say. I would say on paper they won the offseason. The problem I have is they didn't win the offseason relative to the other schools that are around them that are returned, that didn't lose as many players to the portal. Vanderbilt, Florida, and Georgia, and I get Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt, and Tennessee's going to host Vanderbilt, so they're going to beat Vanderbilt. But the point is, there's 3 schools that are better off than them on that front. So while Tennessee could still beat any of those schools, I think it's very hard to say that the advantages that come with not losing players to the transfer portal, they don't have them against 2 of their 3 biggest opponents this upcoming year. And it's kind of and look, from a Georgia perspective, Georgia loses fewer players to the portal. And Georgia, I don't think we would disagree on this, still is a class above Tennessee on the talent front.
Nope. Fair. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Did Tennessee win or lose the transfer portal? It's on the YouTube page. Vote now. Brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Caleb's gotten to know me long enough where he knows I tend to argue with myself because I try to be open-minded and play both sides. Let me play Caleb's side for a second. Dylan says there's still a lack of depth at receiver to me. God forbid Mike Matthews goes down this year or we're in trouble. And then another comment from David is our lack of wide receiver and safety depth are our kryptonite if injuries occur. It's interesting with the transfer portal. I think that Tennessee probably wanted to go out and get another receiver, would have benefited from getting another receiver. But when you start talking about fortifying depth in the secondary, I don't think the transfer portal is the place to do that. So I'll go one step forward, one step back. I think that Tennessee could have used a playmaker receiver like they got with Chris Brazzell. Well, we at least think he's going to be that. But they went out and got a Chris Brazzell. They went out and got a Dante Thornton. The results were mixed, but they targeted the guy and went out and got him, Caleb. They didn't do that with a receiver really this offseason, and you're not going to be able to go to a young man who's at Washington or Oregon or whatever and say, hey, we really need you for our depth. Nobody's going to transfer to be the second string guy. So, Caleb, I still argue that Tennessee won the transfer portal despite the Nico loss, despite the negative PR. But ultimately, I know you see it a little bit different.
Yes, I think that the significance of the Nico loss, because it's not like Tennessee just lost a player to the transfer portal. They lost a significant player to the portal, combined with the fact that who they have on their schedule are other teams that won the portal, combined with the fact that, again, they added the fewest amount of players in the SEC at 4. I think I can't look at this and say they won the portal. I think again, it's those 3 things.
Well, did they lose it, or are you saying you're undecided?
I think they lost it. I think they lost it largely because I would actually I would change my thoughts on this if it wasn't for the fact that 3 of the teams on their schedule, and including 2 of their 3 marquee games this year, did better than them in terms of not losing talent and did better than them in terms of gaining talent. Funny enough.
I see the head scratcher to me. And really the Nico thing is still a bit of a head scratcher. I mean, we know kind of what happened now, but ultimately, I don't know. Did a cell phone die? Did somebody drop their cell phone in the toilet? I mean, it just seems like you could have made some phone calls and made this work out. But Dylan says it does hurt to see us make the playoff and get beat down by a team that dominates the portal. I definitely think we should have been more aggressive with transfers to take the next step. I don't think that's going to happen long term. I think Josh Heupel is going to be a loyal guy to his players. And I think given an opportunity to take a player elsewhere that he thinks is maybe a little bit better than a guy he's got on the roster, I don't think he's going to run guys. I don't think that's the type of culture he wants to build. So I don't think you should expect that type of coach out of Josh Heupel. I will say that, yes, they should have gone out and got another receiver, and maybe they tried to do so. But, Caleb, don't you think at some point the Nico thing was going to blow up on Tennessee somehow?
No, I mean, it definitely was. It's not just the losing Nico, though, I guess is what I'm insisting. It's the bad break of their schedule. They are playing teams. Look, again, there's reason to believe DJ Lagway is overrated in Florida. I totally get that. I totally understand that. There's no denying Florida came together in November, though. I don't think anybody can look at what Florida did and say they came together. Now, they faced two teams. Their two big wins were LSU and Ole Miss. I think you and I could both agree that LSU and Ole Miss had their own chemistry issues by that point in November last year. But
Fair.
Florida should have had the same chemistry issues with Billy Napier on the hot seat, and they did the exact opposite. Now, the question becomes, is Florida, was that like, do you remember that one year, was it 2003, where Florida under Ron Zook finished the year really, really, really strong, and people thought they had a great future under Ron Zook, and then it was just a disaster?
I do.
So the question is, was it that Florida, or was that, they actually turned a corner under Billy Napier, and we're going to see that this year? We don't know, but we do know they return a lot of talent from a team that had the strongest finish to the season last year, and they lost fewer players than Tennessee did to the portal. That's got to be a red flag to a certain degree.
Okay, let me ask you this, though. All things being equal, would you prefer less roster turnover?
All things being equal, would I prefer less roster turnover?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I would.
They got less. They didn't go out and get a bunch of guys. Bottom half of the SEC in terms of players lost.
Yeah, but
I think
half
the
of success is about.
I think the troubling part is that it happened in the spring portal where it's tougher to replace people. I mean, because you lost Nico, but not only that, if you look at the spring window alone, Tennessee lost 6 players. Only 4 or 5 schools, lost more. Ole Miss 9, Kentucky 8, Mississippi State 8, Arkansas, Missouri both lost 7. Tennessee tied with Auburn, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina for 6. That's the troubling part. You needed to be further ahead of the game, because if you lose somebody in the spring transfer portal, it's pretty much impossible to replace them. If you lose somebody in the previous portal, you can replace them, but there's no opportunity to do that now.
No, I totally agree. And so I think also we overrate, they didn't lose this many players to the spring portal. If someone's lost outside of Nico, most of the time when someone is lost to the spring portal, it's someone that team didn't care to lose to begin with. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, most of the time, I think what you're going to see in the spring transfer portal is guys that kind of had one last chance during spring practice to kind of catch on, and they didn't do it. They didn't do what they were supposed to. Who's the most significant? Can you pull up the players that Tennessee lost in the spring alone? Or you can pull up either or. Who's the most significant player that Tennessee lost not named Nico?
The most significant player that Tennessee lost not named Nico. I'm going to it now from the spring portal.
Or both.
Well, a couple. I mean, I would say Jacoby Thomas and Larry Johnson III were big spring portal losses. I would. Now, both of them, I think Larry Johnson left. He could have been a utility player, but the fact is, when they paid David Sanders all that money, I mean, everybody knew that they were going to start David Sanders.
I just don't think you're going to keep depth on the offensive line anymore. I think it's going to be a patchwork thing. I think it's frustrating because I like seeing chemistry and guys build over 2 and 3 years. I just think that's a thing of the past.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I think when you take that into account, that's kind of a big deal. So with that in mind, I'm probably leaning towards, I would probably say that Tennessee, Jacoby Thomas and Larry Johnson are both big losses. But like you said, Larry Johnson, you're just not going to keep the depth. Jacoby Thomas at safety was a big loss. That hurt Tennessee to a certain degree. I think Jacoby Thomas thinks he should have actually been starting at Tennessee at safety and didn't like splitting time with Andre Turrentine. And honestly, I can't blame him on that. So I think that was probably the biggest spring portal loss, was Jacoby Thomas outside of Nico.
Let's talk some offense. Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Tennessee lost 9 starters on offense. That's a big-time concern. Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. I think what you're going to see in the coming weeks is you're going to get positive reports from preseason camp. You'll always do, right? The coaches don't come out and say, man, these guys are absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. Why did I take these guys? You're going to hear some optimism. By the time you get to game week, it's going to be, oh, Joey Aguilar is probably better than Nico. Tennessee's 9 new starters on offense are going to be better than the previous starters on offense, when the bottom line is we know that's not true. Caleb, you're going to see that optimism build. But listen, I think that 9 starters lost on offense is innately difficult to overcome, and it could mean Tennessee has to win with defense throughout the season or in September. But I think that'll get lost. That's Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank member FDIC, among some Tennessee contingent that want great things to happen. And I know a lot of you do, and that's great. But the media that you listen to, be careful with that, because they can get caught up in the optimistic preseason storm. And Caleb, I don't think you can just dismiss 9 starters. I can't remember Tennessee ever losing 9 starters, including a quarterback. I give you that caveat, including a quarterback. That's a big time loss.
It is, and I have gone back as far as I can go, as far as depth charts were tracked. Tennessee has, even if you include sometimes you have like co-starters, whatever like that, Tennessee's never, ever lost 9 starters. Even in the Jeremy Pruitt years and Butch Jones, where they had so much roster turnover during the late 2010s, they always had at least 3 full-time starters returning. Always at least 3. This year, they only have 2. By the way, one of them's hurt, Miles Kitzelman, to start the year. I'm
told he's doing really well. I just want to pass that on. Go ahead.
Oh, I believe that. And I mean, this is incredible. So the 2 returning starters, by the way, is your tight end and your left tackle, Miles Kitzelman and Lance Harris. Now, you could say 2.5, because Chris Brazzell, to be fair, was a major part of the offense last year. He technically wasn't considered a starter because Squirrel White was the guy in the slot, and then on the outside were Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton. Those were the 3 leading receivers, so Chris Brazzell was 4th. So technically, Chris Brazzell doesn't count as a returning starter. But you lose your top 3 receivers. You lose your running back, who set every record known to man last year. I mean, that's kind of underrated. You kind of lose, if I'm getting this right, you lose 4 offensive linemen, including all 3 of your interior linemen, and you lose your quarterback. The closest I can remember, Dave, and there's been a few, is the 2000 Tennessee team, the 2002 Tennessee team, where the injury bug bit them so hard. Remember that? They started the year number 5. They lost Dante Stallworth, Kelly Washington, Travis Stevens on the offensive line. Dante Stallworth, Kelly Washington, Travis Stevens, Will Bartholomew, John Finlayson. So they're starting fullback, running back, tight end, both receivers, all 5 skill players basically. And then they lost multiple offensive linemen. I believe Fred Weary was one of the offensive linemen they lost to the NFL that year. The point being, they lost a ton of key talent. But I still maintain, I think this is, and they lost Reggie Coleman. They lost Fred Weary, Reggie Coleman, were their 2 offensive linemen that they lost. So with that in mind, that might be the closest I can remember. And they had a very disappointing year because the injury bug bit them so hard. So they went 8-5. I don't know anytime, though. This is by far the most. I will say, though,
especially when you include a quarterback, which is like losing 3 starters.
Yeah. When you lose a quarterback, you've lost basically 3. That's true. At least in 2002, they returned their quarterback. I'm going to say, though, and this is going to be crazy, I'm going to counter the bank on it. And it's funny because it's what we just talked about. I say they lost the offseason transfer portal because of what the teams around them did, but overall, they should be happy with their returning talent. This time around, though, my bank on it is they shouldn't be concerned. They should actually be encouraged by the roster turnover on offense.
Okay, interesting. Now, you said it was the 2002 team with the massive amount of turnover, right?
Yes.
They had a couple of teams to warm up with, if you remember, Wyoming and MTSU, and you would have thought that would have benefited them. They trounced both of those teams pretty handily, although MTSU was just 26-3. But then you get to Florida and you lose 30-13. You go back and beat Rutgers 35-14. And you look back, and that offense was not at its best the first month of the season. Now, they ended up scoring 38 points in 6 overtimes against Arkansas, but that's overtime. Do you expect Tennessee to struggle at times in September because they had so much turnover on offense early. And remember this too, coaches will tell you this. On offense, all 11 people have to do everything right. On defense, one guy has to do something right. I should have mentioned Squirrel. Thank you, Dylan, for the shout out there. There was no excuse to lose Squirrel. I think he was a very versatile player. I think that's the head scratcher, Caleb, is that the two players they lost, they're coming off a playoff berth. One's a locked-in starting quarterback. One's a locked-in slot receiver that, quite frankly, you could build packages around the same way they did Princeton Fant, not comparing the athletes, but he's a versatile athlete. I think that's the head scratcher is you got two guys you probably really wanted to keep on the roster.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. But I think, look, I'm going to be honest. I think Squirrel was asking for a little bit more money, and they have a slot guy in Braylon Staley that they like, so they weren't willing to pay. And also, they were going to give Boo Carter some looks on that. So I think Squirrel actually left over playing time. And who's the other guy you mentioned that was a head scratcher?
Nico.
Oh, yeah, Nico. We know that. We know what happened there.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this with Squirrel, too. I've seen this happen with a lot of players, and I wondered if this would happen with Squirrel. He got a lot of pub early because he had a cute nickname, right?
Yep.
And he made some plays as a freshman. A lot of times guys don't respond well to that.
That's true. That's true. That's a very good point.
And he also has a little one. I understand him wanting to get as much money as possible. Yeah, I remember his freshman year. I was like, man, I hope the bug doesn't bite him, the PR bug where he starts to think he's better than he was. I mean, there were T-shirts with squirrels on them, for goodness sake, as a freshman. I mean, he's an 18-year-old.
I agree. Sometimes, though, when you lose guys, better guys stepped in. And I got to point this out. One of the teams that is close to this team in terms of lost talent is... So let's just start with Squirrel. Let's talk about the receivers in general. All due respect, not just Squirrel, all due respect to Squirrel, all due respect to Brew, all due respect to Dante Thornton. Who are you going to miss in that receiving core if you're a Tennessee fan from last year? Maybe Dante?
You don't think Squirrel?
No. I think Braylon Staley can do everything Squirrel would do last year because Squirrel was hurt last year. He played last year with a separated shoulder.
Well, I know. But...
So would you take Braylon Staley or Squirrel White with a separated shoulder?
Well, I think Squirrel's a better player than Braylon Staley. I also think he was a part of Tennessee's long-term plans. I think it's troublesome that you lose a guy that you place so much emphasis on early. They obviously liked him early. They can't come out and say, not that they would, but they can't come out and say, we didn't care about Squirrel. He can go ahead and vamoose.
No, but they basically said he's not worth the money that we got to pay him. It's like in the NFL, you make decisions like that. I think they were fine letting him walk. And okay, let's just go through the receiving core altogether. Mike Matthews, what you project from Mike Matthews or what you saw from Brew McCoy last year? You're at Vegas. Who are you putting money on being more productive?
I'll go Mike Matthews. But
you will go Mike Matthews.
Yeah, but headed into the season, I would have gone Brew.
Yes, I'm just going based off their production last year, what they did last year. Mike Matthews or Brew McCoy, you're taking Mike Matthews. Braylon Staley or what you saw from Squirrel White last year?
Well, the other question was fair. I don't think that's a fair question.
Why is that not a fair question?
Because I'd take a healthy Squirrel over Braylon. That's me.
But he wasn't healthy. We're asking, will they be upgraded this year? And without Squirrel and a separated shoulder, I don't think that's a concern. I think they'll be better this year.
All right. Bank on It brought to you by Commercial Bank. Let's get an update on the poll question. Member FDIC, life made better.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
All right, we got a recruiting question I want to get to first. Update our poll question if you don't mind, sir.
Did Tennessee win the transfer portal despite the Nico Iamaleava loss? Yes, fourth fewest lost in the SEC is 55%. No, Nico plus fewest pickups is 45%.
Okay. Question on recruiting as we go to the message board, and we will address you when you post on there. We greatly appreciate that. Posting so fast, I'm having trouble keeping up. Right, where is it? All right, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Jake Retzlaff. That's the question, a recruiting question.
Question from General Ursus. Dave, just curious, what are yours and Caleb's thoughts on Jake Retzlaff? He has talent and power forward experience. Should Heupel consider going
And
after?
for those who don't know, Jake Retzlaff is the BYU quarterback who I believe has been kicked out because he violated the honor code because wasn't it something about like he was accused of rape. The rape charge was dismissed, but apparently it was consensual sex, but it's BYU, a Mormon school. Premarital sex is banned at that school.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would.
I think they're all in on Joey Aguilar at this point.
Yeah, well, I don't know that they're all in on Joey Aguilar yet, nor should they be. I think they're all in on the quarterbacks they have. I think they at least, even those that doubt Jake Berklinger, I believe think he's got a good 25-30% chance of winning the job. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah, I could say that. Now let me get back to like the other offensive players and why I think they'll be upgraded real quick, Dave, because I don't think it's a concern. Again, I just went across the board with you. I think they're going to be better across the board at receiver than they were last year. Can you even debate that with me? Than they were last year.
In retrospect, no. If you ask me to give my honest preseason opinion, I would say I thought they were going to be better going into last year than I would have thought this group would be.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Now, let's keep going. All right, running back. I can't sit there and say Peyton Lewis will be better than Dylan Sampson. Okay, fine. I'll take the L there. They're returning Miles Kitselman. They're returning Lance Hurd. Assuming they're both healthy, both should be better than they were last year, just as returning starters, right?
Yes.
So Hurd,
Lance could be dominant good.
Yes. So I just named 5 players on offense, 5 of the 11 starters on offense, projected starters, that will be better than last year's position. Now, here's where things get a little spicy, shall we say. Quarterback. Joey Aguilar this year, or what you saw from Nico Iamaleava last year?
I would. The way Nico came on towards the end of the season, I would take Nico.
I'm taking Joey Aguilar this year. Now, Joey Aguilar. Wait. Let me make this clear. I would rather have Nico this year if I'm Tennessee. I would rather have Nico. But compared to what we saw from Nico last year, I would take Joey Aguilar, what I project we'll see from him this year. The only area, by the way, that's a concern, I don't think there's any debate that the interior of the offensive line will be worse this year. But I think the tackles could be better. Lance Hurd, I just brought up. Dave, don't you think David Sanders Jr. could be better at right tackle than John Campbell was last year? I think he could. I mean, I think he's one of those rare guys you step in.
I'm not going to go as a freshman. I don't put much stock in freshman offensive linemen.
Okay, well, I will, and I'm going to say that I think Tennessee could actually have a lot of talent there. The best comparison I can bring up to you is, believe it or not, is the 98 team. Dave, the 98 team lost a ton of starters on offense, as we know, Peyton Manning most notably, but Marcus Nash, Andy McCullough, Trey Teague. What did we find out in 98? We found out that outside of Peyton, for the most part, the backups stepping in were better than the starters. That they just, they actually upgraded it. I mean, they significantly upgraded at receiver in 98. I'm sorry, but Peerless Price was leaps and bounds better than Marcus Nash or Joey Kent was.
How they overcame Andy McCullough. Justin
Jermaine
says
Copeland was better.
Yes.
Andy McCullough got drafted.
Yes. Justin says, why is everyone assuming Aguilar is starting and basing Tennessee season off his performance? Do we really believe Heupel will start Joey over recruited 4- and 5-star if he's not? I'm kind of with you in the back of my mind, but I feel like I'm in the minority, Caleb. But among media contingent, don't you think I'm kind of all alone saying I think Merklinger could still win the job?
Yes, but Heupel doesn't want Merklinger to win the job. There's some politicking going on here, guys. If Merklinger wins the job, Heupel's stuck with Merklinger as his starter for probably the next 3 years, at least the next 2. Heupel doesn't want Merklinger in 2026 because he thinks McIntyre will be better and he thinks Faison Brandon will be better when Faison Brandon arrives. So he doesn't want Merklinger starting because then Merklinger will come back for 2026 and he'll have to open up the competition, or he won't be able to open up the competition. What he really wants is for McIntyre to surpass Merklinger, and then he nudges Merklinger into the portal. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. From Sam, I don't know that these numbers are correct, but I'm going to give you credit for them. 1,242 snaps started by Pendleton and Moe last year at the guard position, 0 sacks given up, and Moe didn't commit 1 penalty. Sam goes on to say the interior is going to be just as good or better. I'm sorry. Without Cooper Mays, I'm not going to say that it's going to be better.
I'm not either. And Sam, you can't look with interior of the offensive line. You can't look at the individual production of what they do, because when we talk chemistry, which we were talking about, Dave, is in Josh Heupel's offense, let's be honest, chemistry is most important among the interior of the offensive line. They have to play together. They have to play like they've played together for years, right? They have to know what each other's doing regularly.
All right, there you go. I'm surprised we haven't talked more about.
We'll get there.
Ross. We're going to. Wasn't he a 5-star defensive end? I think he has a breakout year. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Ted Russell Ford, Ted Russell Lincoln. They absolutely have your vehicle on the lot. East Tennessee's largest volume dealer and great community members that want to make sure you have the best deal. You decide upon an incredible buying experience. That's TedRussellFord.net, TedRussellLincoln.net. I'm telling you, they care about you and they want you to be happy when you drive off that lot. I certainly was. They are absolutely phenomenal. 2 minutes off the hook sports coming up on the program this day in Tennessee sports history. Also, which of Tennessee's big 3 games are they most likely to win? We'll tell you off the hook sports. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go. Stat of the day, Caleb. We'll get to that here in just one moment. A couple of comments from the message board. It's actually what I think I got us out of order.
It's this day. It's this day. Stat of the day's later in the show.
Let's pretend that didn't happen.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
This day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Sports Treasures. Over 5 million sports treasures there in North Knoxville. They are phenomenal. You're not going to believe all that they have when it comes to trading cards, when it comes to fine sports apparel. Sports Treasures will take care of you. What do you got, Caleb, this day in Tennessee sports history?
On this day 6 years ago, Tennessee officially announced that they would be selling alcohol at Neyland Stadium. And later that year, they started the season 0-2 with losses to Georgia State and BYU. And everybody was like, dang, they picked a great year to start selling beer.
But what could go wrong? You have the Lane Kiffin situation. You have the baseball situation where stuff was thrown on the field. I'll be honest with you. I have zero problem with alcohol being at professional sporting events, but I think there's something to the heritage and the family environment of college football. I would rather not be on there. Maybe I'm in the minority there, Caleb, but I would prefer not.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I think their argument was that like people were showing up, I mean, loaded anyway, particularly the students. And I mean, one of the areas, the student section areas that are swiped was always that upper deck that's in the sun. I think that's the south end zone, right? Right
Yes.
there. That's one of the, and that's like, who has ever sat in a September noon game in the upper deck of the south end zone?
Fair.
That is brutal.
Yeah.
And students would show up hungover as hell. And yeah, stuff, it would get bad because the sun's just, you're hungover and the sun is just torching you right there.
Caleb's the kind of person that if he was a police officer, he would say, everybody's speeding, so let's just raise the speed limit.
I mean,
come on. This
no,
day,
no. It depends on the thing. Like, okay, I was a guy like everybody smoking weed, so just legalize weed. It's not that dangerous. I am for, put it this way, I support legalizing vices. I'm for barriers that make it a little bit difficult to access them, though. So, like, you can't fully fuel it. Like, for instance, sports gambling. I'm for legalized sports gambling. I'm not for legalized sports gambling on the phone. I think it fuels an addiction way. I think you should have to go to a casino, like, physically to sports gamble or something like that.
But you do it, don't you?
I mean, yes, but that doesn't mean I'm for it.
This day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Sports Treasures. Over 5 million Sports Treasures.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
All right, it is Four Downs, brought to you by our friends at TedRussellFord.net, TedRussellLincoln.net, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. And I will tell you what, they're fantastic people to work with. My buying experience was absolutely unbelievable. So let's dive into this. Tennessee has at least 3 big games, depending on how you want to determine it. I guess you could throw in Oklahoma, given the tie with Heupel and the fact that Oklahoma is going to want revenge, and I get all that. But basically, even though there's not an East anymore and the rivalry with Alabama is not the same probably as it used to be with the constant expansion and the playoffs and on and on. But the 3 big games is still Florida, Georgia, Alabama, right?
Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. 3 big games, Florida, Georgia, Alabama.
So if they win all 3 games, it's a successful season, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. If they win 2 games, is it a successful season?
Yes, 100%.
I agree. 1 game, successful season.
Provided they don't lose anywhere else, yes, because I think that will be enough to get them to the college football playoff, which is the goal.
I agree. They would have to not drop another game. They would have to make the college football playoff. At the end of the day, that's really what it's all about, isn't it? 4 Downs is now brought to you by Ted Russell.
Come on, guys, it's game time.
4 downs. Can you count? 4 downs. 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, let's dive into it, Caleb, as our guy Coop will set us up, as Coop will take us through 4 downs right now. I think, no, maybe not. Coop will tell us that it's 4 Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Let's start with first down, Caleb. Tennessee versus Georgia. What are the chances that Tennessee, and by the way, if you want to get on the message board, we'll make it a poll question as well. Would 1 win, 2 wins, or 3 wins signify a successful season? I'll let you phrase it how you want to, but what are the opportunities that what's the opportunity that Tennessee has to beat Georgia this season? I don't think Georgia is unbeatable in any shape, form, or fashion this year. I think the scariest team in the SEC is Texas, and then there's a significant fall off.
Yes. So I would say, are you ready for my hot take?
I'm ready.
Tennessee, and I'm dead serious about this. Of those three circled marquee games, their best chance at a win is Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah, their best chance at a win is Georgia. You're getting Georgia at home in September. Georgia lost their quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. They actually, in Carson Beck. So they have to break in a new quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. We watched him play last year. At the end of the year, he wasn't that good. They have, I still say, a dodo for an offensive coordinator, Dodo Bobo. Yes. Even though they didn't lose a lot to the transfer portal, I think they lost a lot in general. So they still have a lot of chemistry issues and talent to replace. They're going to be having growing pains in September, and they're coming to Knoxville. I think when you take all that into account, it is right for Tennessee to be upset Georgia. Georgia's the better team, but it is right for Georgia to make a couple mistakes here or there for Tennessee to win the game, right? And I think that the game being in Neyland, being in September when Georgia hasn't really come together from a talent perspective, Josh Heupel being a better play caller than Mike Bobo. I think one of the underrated parts about college football, Dave, is I think early in the year, coaching has a much bigger impact on games than talent. Talent starts to win out later in the year, but play calling has a much bigger impact early in the year. Is that fair to say? Than later in the year. That's one of the biggest Florida always beat Tennessee in September.
Yeah, my biggest issue though is you've got an offense that's still going to be gelling in September. That's why I can't go Georgia with you.
You think Georgia's offense will be gelling in September?
No, I think Tennessee's offense has to gel in September.
Okay, I could see that, but I think that Tennessee could. But both will be going through growing pains. Which, by the way, when both offenses are going through growing pains, it's anyone's game, and this game's at Neyland. And Josh Heupel, the play caller, has the advantage. And again, play calling and game planning is a much bigger deal in September than it is in December or November. It is. And like I said, that's why Steve Spurrier always beat Tennessee when they played in September, because he was just a way better play caller than anybody else on Tennessee staff. But the one time they played in December, Tennessee won.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you, Coop. All right. I'm wondering where he was.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
It is second down. All right. So let me turn to Alabama. Alabama's going to be a pretty good football team. The biggest question about Alabama is, of course, the situation. However, I've seen this before with coaches. They bide their time with a guy they're not crazy about and develop a guy kind of in the shadows in the background. And I think that's what's happened with Ty Simpson. I think last year they did the best they could with the quarterback situation they had and were planning for this year. I think that's what Kalen DeBoer was doing. And I think from what I've heard from my sources in Tuscaloosa, this quarterback situation is not a concern whatsoever to the Alabama Crimson Tide coaching staff. So I don't know how that sits upon you, but that's what I have been told by good sources.
That's what I've heard too. I think they're being cagey. Guys, the only reason they didn't go with Ty Simpson last year, and I mean the only reason, was Kalen DeBoer was in his first year at Alabama. He was taking over for the greatest coach of all time. It was going to be very hard for him to command the respect of the team, and the team loved Jalen Milroe. So he decided, I'm going to go with Jalen Milroe this year just to keep the team together and not lose the team, basically, was what he did. Jalen Milroe was a horrible fit for Kalen DeBoer's system. A horrible fit. Great fit for somebody like, Nick Saban, who could adjust on the fly to a first read and run quarterback. He did it with Jalen Hurts. Nick Saban has experience with the quarterbacks like Jalen Milroe. Does not have experience. I mean, Kalen DeBoer's type of quarterbacks, he needs them to be able to. Kalen DeBoer's system requires quarterbacks to be able to survey the whole field. It involves a lot of Mike Leach's concepts. Funny enough, just not as gimmicky. When you take that into account, that's something Jalen Milroe couldn't do. That's something Ty Simpson can do. And I think a lot of the players they lost, by the way, was just trimming the dead wood.
It's a third down. Coop.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Hey, you said earlier you thought Tennessee had the best opportunity to beat Georgia. I think Tennessee's best opportunity is to beat Florida because of the three teams, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. I think Florida has the least amount of talent, which is saying a lot, because you should never have the least amount of talent when you talk about a full school. I also think Tennessee has an advantage in terms of coaching over Billy Napier. So let me get your thoughts on Florida. It's 4 Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford and Ted Russell Lincoln. They're on Parkside Drive and Kingston Pike. Caleb's thoughts. Got to check out the super dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Employee pricing is here. You pay what we pay on all new Ford models. Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Thoughts on the Gators?
Okay. By the way, before we get to the Gators, I want to point out Alabama to me is their most certain loss. I think Georgia is their best chance at a win. Alabama is their worst chance at a win. They have a less likely chance of beating Alabama than anybody else on the schedule.
Okay.
Florida is a gigantic toss-up. Tennessee's a better team than Florida. Tennessee has a better coach than Florida. Tennessee's playing at Florida. And Florida has a psychological edge over Tennessee. It's not just that Tennessee hasn't beaten Florida in the Swamp in 22 years. It's not just it's that Josh Heupel himself has a really bad track record in road games right now. And he's got something to prove on that. Just last year alone, Josh Heupel went against the spread, I believe. He lost his last 6 games. He was 0-6 in his final 6 games on the road last year against the spread. He is a bad road coach. And Tennessee's already got struggles against Florida that psychologically impact them. And this Florida team came on strong last year. They could be still going strong this year. Now, I mean, let's not forget, Dave, this Tennessee team needed overtime to beat Florida last year when they were a significantly better team. Now, caveat to this, if things go south for Florida early, and they could, I don't think they'll have some rebound in them in November again, because I think at that point, they're just going to give up on Billy Napier and realize that's just what they are. And I think once the team gives up, Tennessee has a great chance. So that's why Florida's such a toss-up. But no, I think Georgia's a more likely win than Florida. I actually think Georgia's a more likely win because Tennessee's playing at Florida, and the Florida psychological edge over Tennessee is just insane.
Oh, it is insane. I think the game's not in September. When is the game again?
November. It's a November matchup.
I'm not sure how that affects it one way or another. I think that you probably would rather play them early if it's at home and later when it's away because of the heat. But I hate that game's not in September. But I don't know. I'm just not at all convinced in Billy Napier. And maybe at some point I'll let that go. But I mean, what's the top for him? What's the ceiling? 10 wins? Maybe one day? I think it's more like 9, to be quite frankly. Right?
Yeah, but a 9-win Florida team is still more likely to beat Tennessee in the Swamp than anything else. I mean, this Tennessee team, we're talking about a program that, they've only beaten one good Florida team in the Swamp the last 60 years, and that was the 2001 team that beat Florida in the Swamp in December. The 2003 win in the Swamp, that was not a good Florida team that year. Remember when Ingle Martin was starting at quarterback that game?
Yep.
And yeah. So,
by the way, for those that don't know, Florida picked up Harrison Bailey so Tennessee could see an old friend. And I'm not sold on DJ Lagway. That's the other factor I'll throw out there. It seems like DJ Lagway is just naturally getting lumped together with the elite quarterbacks in the SEC. And Caleb, I don't see that.
I don't consider him among the elite quarterbacks, but I think he's good enough with the talent around them to actually win. And Florida showed a lot of talent elsewhere. So when I take that into account, I think DJ Lagway is actually doing I think DJ Lagway can win on that front. And I guess
David says, I think quarterback will be a wash. David, I tend to agree with you.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right. 4th down is Tennessee's entire season will come down to which game?
The one I just talked about, Florida. If they beat Florida, they're in the playoff. If they lose, they're not. I think it's that simple.
They've got to win the rest of their games.
If they lose to Florida?
If they lose, no. If they lose to Georgia and Alabama, they got to
beat Florida.
Beat Florida, Oklahoma. I mean,
yeah. Assuming they win the other 9 games. Assuming they win the other 9 games. If they beat Florida, they're in the playoff. Here's why Florida's so crucial. Actually, if they beat Florida, they still may beat Georgia. By the way, that opens up the door for them to be upset somewhere. Because I think you and I both agree 10-2 is the barometer. That's what you got to hit to get to the playoff, right? 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can beat Florida, they can either afford to lose to Georgia and Alabama, or steal an upset, most likely Georgia, and suffer an upset somewhere else. But I also think that I also think the upset somewhere else is a lot less likely this year than it was last year. When I look at the schedule, if they get past assuming they get past Syracuse, I think if they beat Syracuse is the 4th toughest team on their schedule by far. I think if they beat Florida, they are almost locked to go 10-2 this year.
Jimmy says if you beat Alabama, it is a good season. That is our rival. Jimmy, I think you're in the minority. I think that people are going to view this nowadays as you could lose to Florida. I mean, you can't lose to Florida, Georgia, and Alabama to make the playoff. But theoretically, if you could lose to your 3 rivals and still make the playoffs, most fans are going to view that as a success. Bottom line is you make the playoffs, it's a success.
Oh, I agree. And as a matter of fact, it's actually kind of a callback to the 90s, but in a different way. With Florida and Alabama, this is not the type of year you want. You hate the year where you have to play both of them on the road and get Georgia at home, because Georgia's such a step above everybody talent-wise. You almost feel like you worry you're wasting a home game, right?
Yep. All right, coming up, we will discuss which coach will be attending their last SEC media days, because there are several coaches on the hot seat. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford and Ted Russell Lincoln studios, tedrussellford.net, tedrusselllincoln.net. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super Savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Employee pricing is here. You pay what we pay on all new Ford models. Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
And here we go.
It was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and tedrusselllincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Stat of the day brought to you by Newbert Collision Center coming up. What the H brought to you by Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design. David says, I live down near Jacksonville. Florida fans are scared to death that DJ Lagway is a wrong hit away with his arm and his season will be done. First of all, I'm sorry that you have to live near Jacksonville, Florida. I'm just kidding. Jacksonville is actually a very underrated town. If you've ever been there, it's actually a better town than you would think. It's a pretty nice town. Yeah, DJ Lagway, but by the same token, I'm not sure that DJ Lagway is of the same ilk of some of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. I mean, he's maybe pushing top 5, where I think some people have him top 7 and are just naturally assuming that he'll stay healthy, which is a big assumption.
Yeah, I got DJ Lagway. I would say probably more top 7. It's not my belief in Florida potentially being very good is not just DJ Lagway. It's the players around Florida that and what other, the level of chemistry and the amount of talent they have returning. So that's where I kind of land on that.
All right. What the H brought to you by Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design. This sounds insane because Tennessee had the number 1 player on NFL draft boards this time last year overall. I mean, not the number 1 edge rusher, not the number 1 defensive player, not the number 1. James Pierce was the number 1 overall NFL prospect this time last year. And now, what the H brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Caleb is going to tell you that Tennessee will be better on the edge this year without James Pierce. What are you thinking, Caleb? What the H?
I think Tennessee will be better on the edge without James Pierce this year. Now, I do not think they will be better on the edge if they rely heavily on Joshua Josephs alone. But there were 2 things working against James Pierce last year. 1, teams sold out to stop him from getting sacks. You noticed that, right? Just straight up sold out. 2, James Pierce is not as pure of a just edge rusher as the guy I'm about to talk about, and that is Jordan Ross. I think Jordan Ross is a better edge rusher than James Pierce. Pure 4-point stance edge rusher.
Well, I don't know why James Pierce was in a 4-point stance the entire year. I didn't understand that at all. But NFL scouts are going to disagree with you. Pro Football Focus is going to disagree with you. So I will ask you, what the H brought to you by Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
What the H?
Wow, I've never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. Banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Okay, I'm going to give you this. Through evaluating both of these players coming into today's show, I think Jordan Ross is better at the point of attack. I think James Pierce was a better, when I say edge, I don't mean an all put together edge rusher. I mean literally coming off the edge, usually using an edge rush. I think that Jordan Ross is stronger at the point of attack. I think James Pierce, we reported this, had personal issues before the season started that were not his fault. And I think he came in a little bit light. I think that Jordan Ross will be a legit 245 and maybe bigger, whereas I think James Pierce came in light and probably lost weight and was not at his 245 playing weight. So if you want to take a look at Jordan Ross, a couple of notes. He was a 5-star prospect. He was the #1 edge rusher in the country, according to On3 and 247 Sports. So we haven't really, other than my eyeballs and evaluation, which I hope you respect, we haven't seen enough to truly compare them as college players, right, Caleb?
Correct.
Now, after this year, it's different ball of wax. But if you just want to base it in terms of their high school evaluations, which is not going to be apt much longer, then Jordan Ross is a higher rated player. Pierce was a 5-star defensive line prospect out of Charlotte. He was the number 111 player in the 2022 class. I know that sounds crazy for the guy that was the number 1 overall projection in the NFL draft last year, but I think Jordan Ross is a better physical specimen. Pierce may be a step faster, but I think Ross is a better physical specimen.
Ross is a better physical specimen. They won't mix things around by putting Ross in coverage this year and there's a big reason for that, which is that I think, and I think you would agree with me on this, that linebacker Arian Carter and Jeremiah Thielander will be much better in coverage, right? And I think last year, some of the reasons they dropped James Pierce in coverage is Arian Carter sometimes struggled in coverage. He was trying to learn. I think that won't be an issue this year. They're not worried about that. They'll be fine. So Ross can focus solely on rushing the passer. Ross also has a pretty insane motor. Now, cost him at times. I mean, he did get that roughing the punter penalty last year that cost Tennessee against Arkansas, but he's got I'm going to trigger Dave and anybody else who followed SEC football in the early 2000s. He's got a David Pollock motor. Remember how David Pollock was known for that motor that never stopped? And so he's going to probably rack up a couple of penalties. But honestly, a couple of penalties I've never had a problem with for an edge rusher because you kind of get in the quarterback's head at that point. So
Dylan did a really good job. And I want to get to this comment of kind of encapsulating my thoughts. Pierce was an elite Leo. Ross will be an elite edge. You could trust Pierce to run down a running back or drop back into coverage. Ross is just a guy you can take his leash off and watch him run. I agree with that, Dylan. I think you're spot on, but I think that you're selling Ross short just a little bit. I think that he can be more than that when he heads into this year. I think last year he was a little bit undersized. I don't think he'll have that problem this year. What the H brought to you by Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
All right, what do you make of Dylan's breakdown, Caleb? I tend to agree with that.
All right, my thoughts on that and where I was going to go was that I think that Joshua Josephs will be able to be used to stop some of those running plays because he can run down running backs too. That's one of his skills. He's not as good of an edge rusher. He was used a lot more as edge rusher last year because teams were so obsessed with stopping James Pierce. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to send Josephs around the edge. Now, I think this year, and this is the biggest advantage, I think just everything being equal, Ross is going to be a better edge rusher than James Pierce was. But Dave, defenses aren't going to scheme to stop Ross. They haven't seen him yet. And they're not going to sell out to send 2 extra blockers to the left side for Jordan Ross the way they did James Pierce. And they're going to be caught off guard doing that, I think, a lot. And that's why I think they'll be better at edge rusher.
Pierce last year had 7.5 sacks.
And everybody's trolling, and people are calling that a bad year, by the way. He had 7.5 sacks, and he was drawing double teams every single play. That's actually pretty impressive. What do you think Jordan Ross can do when I think Jordan Ross is better than Pierce as a pure edge rusher, and they're not going to be accounting for him the way they were accounting for Pierce?
I just think you're asking a lot of Jordan Ross. I think to be able to fill that gap in terms of an edge rusher and affect the way an offense plays at the tackle position is asking a lot.
But that's what a 5-star edge rusher is recruited to do.
Yeah. Did Robert Kimdiche do it as a sophomore? Did Myles Garrett do it as a sophomore? That's a good comp, by the way. David said Jordan Ross reminds me of Myles Garrett. That is a really good comp.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
And yes, Robert Kimdiche wasn't like a sack machine, though. I mean, he played more in the middle a lot of times. It's just a rare. I mean, he played on the edge only as a freshman, and they moved him over to the middle because he was so good. As far as Myles Garrett, well, a comp from Tennessee's perspective, a comp would be Derek Barnett, who did it as a freshman and a sophomore and a junior. But for Myles Garrett, yes, Myles Garrett did it as a sophomore. As a matter of fact, Myles Garrett as a freshman had 11.5 sacks. As a sophomore, had 12.5 sacks. went down to 8.5 as a junior. But again, you got to take that with a grain of salt, because when you're so good, teams end up scheming for you in a totally different way than they did before. And I mean, the most notable example of that, Dave, is Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney had a massive drop off his senior year, and he was running a Heisman campaign that year. And
well, Jadeveon Clowney, I'll give you a little insight there, and I had a really good source there going back to recruiting. And this is why I wouldn't have taken Jadeveon Clowney with a first-round pick in the NFL. He had a major toe issue his year, and that scares me when defensive linemen have toe issues. I mean, that's what pushes off. It's what does everything. People like to say, "Oh, it's just a toe." No, a toe that's everything.
It is,
especially a big toe. So, go ahead.
Another comp, and we're just going to go ahead and go to the one of the most legendary edge rushers in the modern era of Tennessee. Leonard Little's first year at Tennessee, he was a sophomore from junior college. He had 13 sacks. That was his best year as an edge rusher at Tennessee, by the way.
That's a heck of a comp. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford and Ted Russell Lincoln studios. 2 minutes. Which coach on the hot seat will not be at SEC Media Days 2026? We'll tell you after this Off the Hook Sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln, Knoxville.
Hello, ma'am. I'm here to look at that plumbing problem. Oh boy. Yep. You're gonna need a whole new sink. If this toilet is no good, you're gonna need a new one ASAP. You are not gonna believe this. You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Do you think that most coaches know they're really on the hot seat, Caleb?
Yes, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just wonder what it's like going to. I go back, and over the years, there have been coaches on the hot seat, right? And you've had some that are really goofy. The goofiest one, though, was one we mentioned the other day. Sharky, what was his name again?
Jim McElwain, when as he was on the hot seat, he faked a death threat story, by the way. It was kind of one of the funny ones.
I forgot about that one. Yes, he faked the death threat story, and he had the Sharky thing. It was just surreal. And the weird part was it was almost like Florida Sports Information Department didn't care about him, and I wonder if he was a jerk. I never talked to them about him. But they just threw him to the wolves. He did like all kinds of one-on-ones. And it was just, the whole thing was really, really uncomfortable. Stat of the day is now brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. Before we get to coaches on the hot seat, and there are a bunch on the hot seat, a bunch that Tennessee will play. First stat of the day brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. All right, hit it, Caleb, because this thing's not queuing up right. So we're just going to have some dance music. We're throwing down. By the way, comment on your shirt. What the hell is going on there?
Ever since I can remember, I've been popping my collar.
I tend to pop a collar every once in a while, but that shirt, wow.
Don't be hating. Don't be hating. Okay, stat of the day.
I'll quote the great Kevin Burnett, who was the guy who dressed up all goofy at NBA games on the sideline. Craig.
Oh, Craig Sager.
Yes, Craig Sager. Where Kevin Garnett, yes, rest in peace, was being interviewed, and he said, "Hold on, before you ask me a question, take that and burn it."
Oh yeah, Kevin Garnett. You said Kevin Burnett by accident at first.
Oh, did I? Oh, wow, that would be an interesting exchange. All right, so what do we got, Caleb?
The statistic of the date is, I pointed out Tennessee is losing all 3 leading receivers from last year. Y'all ain't gonna like this stat, but this bolsters Dave's argument and hurts my argument. The last time they had to replace all 3 leading receivers entering a season was 2013, when they lost Michael Rivera, Justin Hunter, and Cordarrelle Patterson from the year before, and they ended up going 5-7. That was Butch Jones's first year. Even crazier, 2017, the only one of the leading receivers, 3 receivers they returned, was Jawan Jennings, but he suffered a season-ending injury in the opener. So they effectively had to replace all 3 leading receivers that year too. And they went 4-8 and had the worst season in school history.
Okay. Otter Cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Caleb, I'm going to ask you, which of these coaches are on a hot seat? Now, they're all technically on a hot seat. So how do you want to define the difference between hot or cold? Or do you want to just roll with it?
Well, what I figured we would do is this is based on CBS Sports has come out with the hot seat rating of every single SEC head coach. And they do a score basically. And with that, like how hot your seat is. And then based on that score, they come up with the actual hot seat rating. The higher the score, the hotter your seat.
Okay.
On a scale of 1 to 5 or 0 to 5.
Okay. Let's start with Brent Venables. How hot is his hot seat?
Brent Venables' hot seat, I personally think is very hot, and more importantly, so do the ratings. Brent Venables has the hottest seat in the SEC per CBS at 4.67 on the scale to 5.
Yeah, I just don't. They're used to winning with. I thought it was a bad hire from the get, and even if he had the same success that an offensive-minded head coach had, I believe that he would be on the hot seat, because they're used to winning with offense. So you go back to the Heupel quarterback days. So I think it's extremely hot. I think it gets even hotter if Josh Heupel has success at Tennessee and they look and they see a former player having offensive success and winning football games and making college football playoffs. It's not to say they can come get Josh Heupel, but I do think that factors into your decision making. So I would say that it's the hottest in the SEC. I have no argument with that. And also the fact that he looks like Skeletor is hot.
He looks like what?
Skeletor.
Oh.
Meanwhile, all right, go ahead.
I think it's hot.
Remember, let me do my Skeletor impression for the rest of the show.
Sure.
Remember,
I think it's
go to the message board.
I think it's hot too.
Till we meet again.
I think Venables' seat is actually very, very hot too. And also, I mean, this is Dave. I'm going to throw a name out there. Doesn't this strike you as a Chavis hire? A guy who should have just been a career defensive coordinator that, couldn't get a head coaching job for a long time, and finally a school took a chance on him. But it's like there was a reason he didn't get a head coaching job before Oklahoma.
John Chavis is not good with people. I don't know how and that's why he didn't get a job. He would have gotten a job. Wasn't
okay, but still long-term coordinator. Another one is Jeremy Pruitt, long-term coordinator that never seemed like head coach material, honestly.
Well, no, I agree. But the only reason he got an opportunity is because Tennessee was desperate.
Philip Fulmer wanted to hire a coach who he would get the credit if that coach had success.
Now, here's what would be interesting if this played out. General Ursus posted this. It's a great point. What if Venables does get fired? And we've naturally just said, oh, Josh Heupel could go to Oklahoma, his home. But what if Josh Heupel calls Brent Venables, says, why don't you come be the defensive coordinator at Tennessee? That could certainly shake out in Tennessee's favor, because I think Tim Banks is going to get a head coaching shot after this year. I'm on record.
I agree. That could work. For those who don't know, Tim Banks laid the blueprint for shutting down Jalen Miller last year, and Brent Venables just basically took that and put it in overdrive, and that's why Oklahoma beat Alabama 24-3 last year. So that's certainly possible.
Okay. I like that. All right. Sam Pittman.
That's hot.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly hot.
Motorcycle Bobby's about to get his job back at Arkansas.
Oh.
And that they hired him as offensive coordinator for a reason. Yeah, I think Sam Pittman his seat is pretty warm. His rating is not as high as Brent Venables because his rating is 4.22. I think the reason it's the one reason it might not be as high as I think Sam Pittman players like Sam Pittman a lot. And I think it's a little bit harder to fire him. But yeah, I don't see Arkansas lasting past this year.
He's 30-31 overall, 14-28 in the conference. I mean, it should be hot. I would argue that they should have made a change after last year, despite the fact they improved. They went from 4-8 to 7-6. But is that enough? Oh, I don't think so.
He makes my football IQ segment really easy each week because you can count on Sam Pittman getting on there about 5 times in a year.
That's hot.
All right, let's go. Next up is Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze, I have trouble determining how hot his seat is because I don't know what he's doing off the field other than playing golf. I don't know if he's still seeing prostitutes. I don't know if he's playing a lot of golf or some golf. I don't know if Lane Kiffin's giving him a hard time for playing a little bit of golf or he's playing a lot of golf. So I have trouble answering this one. I guess my answer is it could be mega hot. It could be mega not.
I think it's mega hot, and he's tied for Sam Pittman with his rating at 4.22. But for a different reason. Not because players love him or anybody respects him, but because Hugh Freeze has had success elsewhere, so people are going to hold out hoping it would happen again. Very similar, Dave, not unlike, why did Johnny Majors get so long at Tennessee? It wasn't just because he was beloved by Tennessee. It's because he had such success at Pitt. They were just thinking he's bound to have it at Tennessee, right? And Hugh Freeze has a track record to fall back on of success coaching. At the same time, and Auburn, by the way, is desperate. They fired coach after coach after coach, and they thought they could settle on Hugh Freeze. At the same time, when you're not winning, your character really starts to outweigh everything else. Your character doesn't matter if you're winning, right? But when you're not winning, all of a sudden people don't mind talking about this dude's making excuses. He's on the golf course. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. I mean, the same with like Derek Dooley back in the day. If Derek Dooley had gone like 10-2 in 2012 at Tennessee, no one would care that he didn't recruit Von Bell. But he went 5-7. So the fact that he didn't recruit Von Bell made people mad.
And then you have Hugh Freeze is responding to some media reports. I don't know if you saw that, but he criticized Paul Feinbaum for not understanding Auburn football recruiting. Well, it's not that difficult. Okay.
Paul Feinbaum understands it better than Hugh Freeze does.
Well, I know. And listen, and when you start answering to the media publicly, it's hot.
That's hot.
So actually this just broke. So I'm going to say it's very hot. I'm going to change my opinion.
Wait, and I love Dylan. What I showed you the other day. Now watch this drive.
Right.
We must stop the terror.
All right.
All
so
right.
who's up next? Billy Napier. I think it's constantly hot.
That's hot.
I think it's not as hot as the others because, Dave, I think Florida, Josh Pate had the greatest analogy for this. Florida, while everybody else is on the Autobahn trying to go outpace each other at 100, 115, 110 miles an hour, Florida is just going steady 40 miles an hour down the interstate, waiting for the other cars to crash so they can pass them. And they're just staying at 40 miles an hour with Billy Napier. And I think they think that's what they need to do. So
I will tell you this, talking to some Florida media that you may have not heard from, but there were a lot of Florida fans that thought this was a really splash up and coming hire, much like Urban Meyer from Utah. There were a lot of people who a lot of fans who had him in that regard. I certainly didn't, because I'm objective and I'm on the outside looking in. But I think the expectations might be a little higher than you think, which would only make the seat hotter. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters, cityheatandair.com.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your man.
Remind you to support our sponsors. That's why we're here. Mark Stoops. I'm going to defer and say he's never on the hot seat until he's actually fired, because I think Kentucky is okay being a 7-8 win football team, and I don't believe that his seat is hot until I get firm evidence otherwise.
Are you ready for why his seat's actually hot?
Okay.
So one, it's hard. It's good. It's now, because of the no divisions, it's much harder for Kentucky to be your typical 6-6 team now. They're going to have to play some more tough schools, so they can't just. What was their method, Dave? Schedule the 3 easiest non-conference games possible and beat up on the bottom 3 teams in the SEC East, and that's how they got to 6 wins, right? Every year. Mm-hmm. And that method's not going to work anymore because there's no divisions. On top of that, and here's a big one. This is something nobody's talking about. They may be content going 6-6, 7-6. But not only are they not content going 4-8, they're not content paying a football coach $9 million a year, which is what Mark Stoops is making. And I think in their mind, they're going to say, particularly, look, I don't think Mark Pope, I'm not so sure he'll work out that well at Kentucky basketball. If they have to get rid of Mark Pope in a year and they got to shoot for the stars in the basketball realm, don't you think they'd like to free up some money and maybe not have to pay a football coach $9 million?
That's hot.
Agreed. All right.
With that, I think he's done.
All right, so let me ask you this. Brian Kelly at LSU. I could make the argument that his seat is hotter than all of these guys. Why? Because he's made a national championship game. He was expected to step in and win. These other guys were at least somewhat reaches, right? I mean, they all had question marks except for Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's the guy that you go write the blank check to, and he comes in and he gets you into the Final Four, gets you in a championship game. You're definitely in the playoffs, and suddenly that's not happening. It doesn't help that he's come across as a complete goofball a couple of different times. It also doesn't help the fact that you've had an Ed Orgeron win a national championship there. So if I'm an LSU fan, I'm like, how damn hard can it be?
Yeah, Ed Orgeron and Les Miles. So, I mean, let's put them on a Dumb and Dumber contest. I don't know how you
Miles at least had a good crew around him, and I guess Orgeron did too. I just man, he looked into a lot of talent.
He did. Brian Kelly, I'm with you. I thought, and I'm serious on this, guys, I thought a Saban-like dynasty was coming to LSU. We've talked about this before. Louisiana. If you look at the best football states in the country, like the top 5, they're all like usually the big ones, like, big in population, Florida, Texas, California, and somehow Louisiana is in the top 5 with its small size. And that's crazy. The talent there is insane. And all those kids, every one of them wants to go to LSU. Every single one of them. They don't want to go anywhere else.
I would argue this. I would say that LSU has the best in-state talent base in terms of allegiance and talent. I think Ohio State is second.
I totally agree. LSU is the easiest school in the nation to recruit at. It's the easiest school to win at. It's why 2 of the dumbest coaches in history won national titles there. And I mean, so I genuinely think that I thought Brian Kelly would have a dynasty there. He hasn't yet. LSU, by the way, they are aware of this too. And they're starting to ask the questions. Brian Kelly's score is 3.33. His hot seat rating score is 3.33, which is basically you're not really on the hot seat yet, but you better win this year or we're going to have to start talking. Now, LSU has done a very good job in the transfer portal. They have a good recruiting class coming in next year. They are acquiring a ton of talent. They're going all in. I do think that they need to win. I mean, look, we haven't talked about this, but if LSU's not in the college football playoff, there's a chance Brian Kelly's fired.
That's hot.
I don't think so. And here's why. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think his seat is hot because he won 9 games last year, won 10 the previous 2 games. So he hasn't reached our expectations, but that's a team that had there been a 12-team playoff, he would have made it the 2 previous years, not last year. So if I'm an LSU administrator and he wins 8 games, he wins 9 games. Now, it depends how you win them and how you lose games. But if he's in that 8 or 9 and still knocking the door in the playoff, I'm not going to make a change. Certainly not going to give him a raise, but I'm not going to make a change either. So while I think the backdrop raises the stakes, I do believe the fact that he's won 10, 10, and 9, I think locks him in for another year unless the wheels completely come off.
I think so too. I guess you could be right on that. I think he's at least on the hot seat, though. Would you give me that? If they're not in the playoff, he's on the hot seat. People are going to start asking questions. I mean, if Brian Kelly played Les Miles or Ed Orgeron in a game of chess, you would put all your money on Brian Kelly. And
yes.
It's so I don't understand how this hasn't taken off yet. He had a Heisman quarterback in 2023. So
what does the message board say?
Calhoun, like Louisiana style with the X.
Like the X.
Okay, playing off General Ursa's comment. All right, Dave, you've seen Saw the movies, right?
Seen what?
Saw, the movie Saw?
Absolutely not. Why the hell would I watch it? I mean, I don't understand why anybody watches scary movies. It makes no sense to me. Why would you want to be scared? That's like saying, eat this and it'll make you sick.
Some people do that, by the way. Okay, hold on. Let me ask you this question, though.
Yeah, they're called bulimic.
You get put in a jigsaw trap, and to be freed, you have to choose either either Ed Orgeron or Les Miles has to solve a logic problem for you to be able to free yourself.
It's definitely Les Miles.
You think Les Miles could solve the logic problem before Ed Orgeron?
I'm saying he could, but I'm saying he'd be more likely. I've covered both extensively, so I feel pretty good about that one.
The only reason I think it could be Ed Orgeron is, we at least say that Ed Orgeron was smart enough to take his hands off the program and let his staff do the work while he was a cheerleader? Les Miles wanted his hands all over the program.
It's funny you brought that up. I was talking to an NFL scout, and he was on LSU's campus. This is the year before they won the national championship, and he's evaluating the talent over the summer. And he tells me, he said, Dave, I'm telling you, Ed Orgeron will step away and let those coordinators do all that they want to do. They can win a national championship. I'm no, they can't. He's like, I'm telling you, they can. And I didn't believe it. I didn't listen to this very good source, very good scout. And what did they do? Ed Orgeron stepped away. He was completely the CEO. He just joked around and hit on boosters' wives. And next thing you know, he won a national championship.
Yeah, exactly. With arguably the greatest team of all time. And so, yeah, that's what happened. And meanwhile, what happened with Les Miles? Les Miles, they were begging him to change the offense because he was sticking with an offense that wasn't working. They were begging. And he threw up a middle finger and went and hired Cam Cameron as his offensive coordinator just to stick it to the LSU staff to say, nope, I'm sticking with this bland offense and winning with defense. And it got him fired. That's the difference between the two, is that Ed Orgeron, you're right. He went all hands off because he and Matt Canada had a big clash, I think, the offensive coordinator before Steve Ensminger.
I tell you what, Adam, absolutely. I think if I wrote about LSU, I would write this column right now. He hit the nail on the head. Adam said, NIL left Brian Kelly looking like the unluckiest coach alive, left the second richest school for a team whose athletes are leaving the state for the first time to chase NIL.
That's a great point.
And a poor state.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
you're right. A lot of poor kids in that state.
Well, yeah. I don't know their overall athletic budget, but do they have the money? As a matter of fact, in my mind, you don't have to, but in my mind, I'm flip-flopping Ohio State and LSU. I think Ohio State now has the greatest in-state talent advantage in the nation, and it's because of the financial difference between their school into LSU. I'm flip-flopping those two.
Okay, from that perspective, I think you're right. I actually think you're right. The one reason I kind of hold back is like, it's not just the Louisiana in-state talent is also just underrated because those athletes are freakishly athletic. Guys, you can track like athletes at the pro level. And I mean, Louisiana kids are always by far, they're not just like great athletes, like compared to other great athletes everywhere. They're like another level of like, and humanly athletic. I mean, honestly, and more than any other state, by the way. That Mississippi Delta, that southern portion right there, lower Mississippi, Louisiana into the southeastern part. I mean, that is those are the best athletes in the world. I mean, in the world.
By the way, there was a point in which Louisiana had the most NFL players per capita. That's not the case anymore. Do you know Georgia passed them and Alabama's nipping at their heels?
Georgia per capita?
Hmm?
I could believe Alabama. I'm shocked by Georgia. That's kind of interesting, actually.
Georgia about 1 per 73,000. Louisiana about 1 per 80,000. Alabama 1 per 85,000. I would love to go back, and I will try to do it. What was the per capita player in the NFL before Nick Saban took over at Alabama? Because he rejuvenated that state, an already football crazy state. He rejuvenated it with his ability to win a championship for the University of Alabama. So I think he affected truly the amount of players that come out of Alabama. I didn't think of Alabama as a talent-rich state 20 years ago. Did you?
I thought of it as a more talent-rich state than Tennessee.
More than Tennessee, yes. But
Yes.
not on the same ilk of Georgia and
No, not on the same
Florida
ilk of Georgia
or Louisiana.
No, not at all. The one thing Alabama always had, and I actually think this comes more from Bear Bryant than it does from Nick Saban. Even during the doldrums, the lowest points of Alabama, the high school coaching in Alabama is second only to Texas. And it really has been for a long time. They've got some of the best high school football coaching around. And you talk about that, like the talent is South Alabama, the high school coaching is North Alabama, and the combination creates a lot of great situations. I mean, the most notable one, I mean, we talk about him now, the UAB head coach a while ago, Bill Clark, who I think stepped down in 2021. Bill Clark is representative of that. Just one of the greatest coaches in all of college football and in all of high school football, and coached in the Alabama high school circuit for a long time. Bear Bryant created an entire network of just elite high school football coaches in Alabama.
Yep. All right. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We'll see you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. Stay tuned over the weekend. We'll have plenty of recruiting news, even more. A column that I hope you enjoy that discusses how Tennessee, even with Nico, I believe won the transfer portal. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, live from the Ted Russell Ford and Ted Russell Lincoln studios, tedrussellford.net, Ted Russell Lincoln.